The red dust swirled across the Martian landscape as the excavation team worked tirelessly under the twin moon's pale light. Deep beneath the planet's surface, in a chamber that hadn't seen light for thousands of years, Admiral Songho Park stood motionless. His eyes were fixed on the holographic display floating before him, casting eerie blue shadows across his weathered features. The discovery had been accidental. What started as a routine mining operation near Olympus Mons had turned into the most significant archaeological find in human history. The chamber they stood in now wasn't natural. Its walls were smooth, crafted by hands that had mastered technology far beyond their current understanding. "Admiral, you need to see this," Dr. Jai-Yun Lee called out from across the chamber. Her voice echoed off the metallic walls, carrying a mix of excitement and disbelief. The lead archaeologist's usually neat appearance was disheveled after hours of non-stop work, her protective suit covered in the rust-colored dust of Mars. Songho made his way carefully across the chamber, his boots leaving fresh prints in the dust that had settled over millennia. The team had been working here for months, but each day brought new surprises. Today's discovery, however, would change everything they thought they knew about human history. Jai-Yun pointed her light at a section of the wall where symbols glowed faintly under her touch. "These markings, they're not just decorative. They're coordinates, Admiral. Star maps." Her hand trembled slightly as she traced the patterns. "And the language. It's an ancient form of human writing." The Admiral's breath caught in his throat. "Human? You're certain?" "Absolutely." Jai-Yun pulled up a holographic comparison on her wrist device. "We found similar patterns in ancient Earth ruins, but we never understood their significance until now. These are coordinates to human settlements, dozens of them, spread across different star systems, and they existed long before our recorded history." The implications were staggering. Songho's mind raced as he tried to process what this meant. Their ancestors hadn't just reached Mars, they had spread across the stars, built civilizations, and then vanished. As if reading his thoughts, Jai-Yun continued, "There's more, Admiral. The deeper chambers show signs of violence. Whatever happened here wasn't peaceful." She led him through a narrow corridor into another room, this one filled with debris that was clearly not natural to Mars. Scattered across the floor were fragments of what could only be described as advanced technology. Twisted metal that still held a shine despite its age, components that hummed faintly when touched, and most tellingly, the unmistakable shape of weapon casings. "We found this data crystal yesterday," Jai-Yun said, holding up a small translucent object. "It took us hours to decode even a fraction of it. But what we found..." She paused, her face grim. "They called themselves the Collective, a federation of advanced alien species. They saw humanity's rapid expansion across the stars as a threat." Songho picked up a piece of what appeared to be hull plating, its surface marked with impact patterns. "They attacked us. Not just attacked. They systematically destroyed every human settlement, pushed us back, erased our history." Jai-Yun's voice shook with anger. "They engineered our downfall, Admiral. Reduced us to primitive beings, forced us to start over from scratch on Earth." The Admiral set the plating down carefully, his military mind already analyzing the implications. "How many settlements? How far did we reach?" Jai-Yun brought up another holographic display, this one showing a map of the galaxy. Points of light began appearing, spreading outward from Earth like a starburst. At our height, nearly 1,000 colonies across hundreds of light years. We were one of the dominant species in this sector of the galaxy. Songho stared at the map, at the legacy of a civilization that had been deliberately erased. "And these coordinates, they'll lead us to the other colonies. What's left of them?" Jai-Yun nodded. "But Admiral, that's not the most important part." She manipulated the crystal, bringing up new data streams. "The technology here, the weapons, the ships, we can understand it. More than that, we can rebuild it. They tried to erase our knowledge, but they didn't count on us finding this facility. The Admiral's eyes narrowed as he looked at the ancient weapons systems, the ship designs, the defense protocols, everything humanity would need to reclaim its place among the stars. "How long?" he asked quietly. "How long until we can begin?" Jai Yun's answer was immediate. "With global resources, 5 years." Song Ho Park stood in silence for a long moment, watching the holographic stars spin slowly above them. 12,000 years ago, humanity had reached for the stars and been violently cast down. Now they had found their way back to their legacy. The collective had tried to ensure humanity would never rise again, but they had failed. And soon, very soon, they would learn the cost of their actions. "Begin full documentation," he ordered, his voice steady. "I need to contact Earth Command immediately. Everything changes today." As he turned to leave the chamber, his boot disturbed something in the dust, a small piece of metal that caught the light. Bending down, he picked up what was clearly a name badge, its surface still gleaming after millennia. The name was written in both ancient human script and another alien language. Proof, if any more was needed, of humanity's forgotten greatness. The galaxy had forced humanity to forget its past. Now, humanity would make sure the galaxy never forgot its return. The massive viewing window of Europa Station offered a breathtaking view of Jupiter's swirling storms. Director Han Bin Kim stood there, his reflection overlaid against the gas giant's eternal tempest. Behind him, the sounds of construction echoed through the station, the constant hum of machinery that hadn't been active for thousands of years. The abandoned shipyards of Europa had been humanity's greatest discovery since the Mars facility. While Mars had given them knowledge, Europa had given them the means to use it. The ancient space docks stretched for kilometers across the moon's icy surface, preserved perfectly in the frozen vacuum of space. Han Bin checked his tablet as another progress report came in. 5 years ago, when they'd first found these yards, they'd seemed like an impossible puzzle. Now they were building ships that would have made their ancestors proud. The first modern FTL drive was nearly complete, its massive frame taking shape in dockside. "Director, the world leaders are ready for your briefing," his assistant said quietly from the doorway. Han Bin nodded, straightening his uniform. In the conference room, holographic faces of Earth's most powerful people floated around the table. Some showed excitement, others concern, but all shared the same intensity as they waited for his report. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "what you're seeing behind me is humanity's future." He gestured, and a hologram of the nearly completed drive appeared in the center of the room. 5 years ago, we discovered who we really were. Today, we take the first step toward reclaiming that legacy. The president of the African Union leaned forward. "The tests are successful then." "Beyond our highest expectations," Han Bin replied. "Dr. Dahai Cho and her team have done the impossible. They've not only decoded the ancient propulsion systems, but improved upon them." As if on cue, Dahai entered the room. The young scientist looked exhausted but triumphant. Dark circles under her eyes spoke of countless sleepless nights, but there was a fire in her gaze that couldn't be dimmed. "The principles behind the drive are actually quite elegant," she explained, manipulating the hologram. "Our ancestors understood something about space-time that we're only now rediscovering. They didn't break the light barrier. They found a way around it." The hologram showed a simulation of the drive in action, folding space around a vessel in ways that made several leaders blink in confusion. "We've combined their understanding with modern quantum mechanics. The result is an FTL drive that's more efficient than even the original designs." "How much more efficient?" the Chinese premier asked. Dahai smiled. "The prototype we've built can reach Alpha Centauri in just under 4 hours. The original design suggested a journey of at least 12. A murmur of amazement ran through the assembled leaders. Alpha Centauri, humanity's closest stellar neighbor, was over 4 light-years away. The ability to reach it in hours rather than years or decades changed everything. "Our ancestors were giants," Han Bin told them. his voice filled with pride. "And now we know why we've always looked to the stars. It's time to reclaim what was taken from us." The Russian president spoke up. "And what of the collective? If we rebuild our fleet, surely they will notice." "They already know we're here," Hanbin replied. "Our deep space sensors have detected their probes at the edge of our system. They'd been watching us since we broke the Mars facility's seals." Dahai brought up another hologram, this one showing Earth's solar system and the web of defensive satellites they'd been quietly building. "We're not defenseless anymore. The weapons systems we've recovered are beyond." The shipyards had been a closely guarded secret. While the Mars discovery had been impossible to hide, they'd managed to keep the true nature of their Europa operations classified. The collective's probes saw only what appeared to be a mining operation on the icy moon. "The first fleet will be ready within months," Hanbin continued. "We've automated most of the construction process using the yard's original systems. Each ship will be equipped with both defensive and offensive capabilities that match or exceed current collective technology." He paused, letting that sink in. "But most importantly, we have something they don't: desperation. They tried to destroy us, to erase our history. That kind of action breeds a certain determination." The UN Secretary-General spoke for the first time. "And you believe we're ready for this step? To announce our presence to the galaxy?" "We've been ready since we first looked up at the stars and wondered what was out there," Dahai answered before Hanbin could. "That wonder, that drive to explore, it wasn't random. It was an echo of who we used to be, who we can be again." Hanbin nodded at her words. "The test flight is scheduled for next week. Once we prove the drive works, we can begin mass production. Within a year, humanity will have a fleet capable of not just defending Earth, but taking the fight to them if necessary." The leaders discussed the implications for another hour, but the decision had really been made 5 years ago when they'd first discovered the truth. Humanity had been given a second chance, and they weren't going to waste it. After the meeting, Hanbin returned to the viewing window. Jupiter's storms continued their eternal dance, unchanged by the momentous decisions being made in their shadow. Dahai joined him, her reflection appearing beside his. "Do you think they know what's coming?" she asked quietly. Hanbin smiled slightly. "The collective. They probably think they know exactly what we're capable of. They've been watching us grow from stone tools to spacecraft, after all." He turned to look at her. "But they forgot one important thing about humanity." "What's that?" "We learn from our mistakes, even the ones we didn't know we'd made." He gestured to the shipyards below. "They taught us the hardest lesson of all: never to take our achievements for granted. This time, we won't." The next week, humanity would make its first faster-than-light journey in 12,000 years. The galaxy would soon learn that some giants never truly fall. They just sleep for a while. The diplomatic vessel, Earth's Memory, dropped out of FTL on the edges of the Proxima Centauri system. Ambassador Sun Mai Choi stood on the bridge, watching the alien station grow larger in the main viewport. The massive structure gleamed like a jewel against the backdrop of stars, its crystalline surfaces refracting light in ways that made it seem almost alive. This meeting wasn't supposed to happen for another year. Humanity had planned to establish more colonies, build up their fleet further before revealing themselves to the collective. But the discovery of their observation posts in the Kuiper Belt had forced their hand. "They're hailing us," Communications Officer Park reported, his fingers hovering over the controls. "Standard collective diplomatic frequencies." Sun Mi smoothed down her formal diplomatic uniform, a design that deliberately incorporated elements from humanity's recovered past. "Except the transmission." The holographic display flickered to life, showing 3 beings that made several bridge crew members catch their breath. The collective representatives stood nearly 3 meters tall, their iridescent skin shifting colors like oil on water. Their eyes, 4 per being, blinked in an unsettling rhythm. "Unknown vessel," the central figure spoke, its translator converting the musical tones into Earth standard. You have entered restricted space. Please identify. The beam stopped abruptly, all 12 eyes widening as they took in the humans on the bridge. Sunma stepped forward, her voice steady. I am Ambassador Sunma Choi of Earth and her colonies. We request diplomatic discussions with the Collective Council. The silence that followed was deafening. The alien skin shifted rapidly through colors, purple, green, red, before settling on a pale blue that humans would later learn indicated shock. Earth, the leftmost being managed. Your species is not cleared for interstellar travel. Our records indicate. Your records, Sunmai interrupted smoothly, are about 12,000 years out of date. The central being's skin flushed a deep crimson. Impossible. The protocols were clear. The restrictions. We found Mars, Sunmai stated simply. The words hit like physical blows, making the alien step back. The collective representatives exchanged glances, their skin now pulsing with rapid color changes that their emotional control couldn't suppress. Fear, that was obvious even to human eyes. Fear quickly masked by diplomatic pleasantries. We would be honored to receive Earth's representative, the central being said carefully. Though this is most unexpected. Sunmai allowed herself a small smile. I imagine it is. Our vessel will dock in 30 minutes. I trust that's enough time for you to contact your superiors. The transmission ended, and Sunmi turned to her crew. Captain Lee Ji-won, who had been silent during the exchange, stepped forward. They're panicking, he observed. Good, Sunmi replied. Panic makes people sloppy. We need information more than we need their cooperation right now. The docking procedure was smooth, almost too smooth. The collective's technology matched everything they'd learned from their recovered archives. As Sunmai walked through the station's corridors, flanked by her security team, she noted how little had changed in 12,000 years. The collective, it seemed, didn't believe in fixing what wasn't broken. The conference room they were led to was clearly designed to impress, with views of space from every angle. More collective representatives had arrived. 7 now, each displaying varying shades of anxiety through their color-changing skin. We represent Earth and her colonies, Sunmai stated firmly as she took her seat, and we have questions about events that transpired roughly 12,000 years ago. The collective representatives exchanged nervous glances. Their skin rippled with waves of deep purple, guilt, according to their recovered databases. They knew their ancestors' crimes had finally caught up with them. Ambassador, the eldest-looking being spoke, its voice carefully modulated. You must understand. The decisions made then were what? Sunmai interrupted. Necessary, justified. You systematically destroyed thousands of human colonies. You bombed our worlds back to the Stone Age. You erased our history so thoroughly that we had to discover it by accident. She placed a data crystal on the table, a copy of the records they'd found on Mars. We know everything. Every attack, every world that burned, every lie you told to justify it. The only question now is, what are you going to do about it? The alien skin had settled into a uniform gray, fear and resignation combined. The eldest spoke again. What do you want from us? Want? Sunmai leaned forward. We want acknowledgement. We want reparations. But most of all, we want guarantees that what happened to us will never happen to another species. She activated a hologram showing the current state of Earth's fleet. The ships were beautiful and terrible. Designs from their past merged with modern innovations. The collective representatives' color shifted to pale white as they recognized weapons systems they thought had been erased from history. We're not here for revenge, Sunmai continued. We're here to prevent the next genocide. Your choice is simple. Work with us to create a more just galaxy, or watch as we dismantle your Federation one system at a time. The threat wasn't idle. Earth's fleet was smaller than the collective's, but they had advantages. They remembered how to fight wars their enemies had forgotten were possible. The eldest being's skin shifted to a color Sunmai hadn't seen before, a deep, resonant gold. "You've changed," it said quietly. "Your species. You're not what you were." "No," Sunmai agreed. "We're what you made us. The question is, are you ready to face the consequences of that decision?" The meeting would continue for hours, but that moment, when humanity's representatives stared down the descendants of their destroyers, would be remembered for centuries to come. The galaxy was about to change, and the storm gathering on the horizon would reshape everything it touched. They had awakened the giants, and now they would have to live with them. The massive starship dropped silently through the darkness of space, its engines pulsing with a soft blue glow. Inside the bridge of Earth's memory, Ambassador Sunma Choi watched the stars streak past through the main viewport. Each minute brought them closer to the collective's primary diplomatic station, and closer to a confrontation 12,000 years in the making. "Contact in 5 minutes, Ambassador," reported Captain Lee from his command chair. Sun Mi nodded, checking her reflection in a nearby screen. The formal diplomatic uniform she wore was new, specially designed for this meeting. Its style deliberately echoed the ancient patterns they'd discovered in the Mars archives, a silent reminder of humanity's true heritage. "Their sensors have detected us," Lieutenant Park announced from his station. 3 collective vessels moving to intercept. Through the viewport, Sunmai could see them now. Sleek ships with crystalline hulls that seemed to shimmer in the starlight. They were beautiful, in an alien way, but all she could think about were the recordings they'd found of similar ships burning human worlds to ash millennia ago. "They're hailing us," Park said. "Standard diplomatic frequencies." Sun Mi took a deep breath, centering herself. Everything hinged on these next moments. On screen, the holographic display flared to life, revealing 3 tall figures. The collective representatives stood nearly twice the height of an average human, their iridescent skin rippling with colors like oil on water. 4 eyes on each face blinked in an unsettling pattern as they studied the human crew. "Unknown vessel," the central figure began and translated Earth Standard, its musical voice carrying a note of authority that suddenly faltered as it registered what it was seeing. All 12 eyes widened simultaneously. The silence stretched for several heartbeats before Sunma stepped forward. "I am Ambassador Sunma Choi, representing Earth and her colonies. We request immediate diplomatic discussions with the Collective Council." The alien skin shifted rapidly through shades of blue and purple, a sign of shock, according to their recovered archives. The leftmost being spoke, its voice wavering slightly. "This is impossible. Your species is not cleared for interstellar travel. The protocols were broken," Sunmai interrupted smoothly, "when we discovered the truth about our past." The effect was immediate. The being's skin flushed a deep crimson, and they stepped back as one. Fear radiated from them in waves, poorly masked behind diplomatic pleasantries as they invited the human vessel to dock. The docking procedure took 20 minutes, during which Sunmai could feel the tension building throughout the station. News of their arrival was spreading. By the time she stepped through the airlock, flanked by her security team, the corridors were lined with collective officials, their skin displaying a rainbow of emotional colors. The conference room they were led to was massive, clearly designed to impress visitors with its panoramic views of space. More collective representatives had gathered, 7 now, including some who must have transported in from nearby systems at maximum speed. Sunmi took her seat at the gleaming table, noticing how the aliens towered over her even while seated. Their height had once been intimidating to their ancestors. Now it just seemed like overcompensation. "We represent Earth and her colonies," she stated firmly, her voice carrying across the chamber. "And we have questions about events that transpired roughly 12,000 years ago." The collective representatives exchanged nervous glances, their skin rippling with waves of deep purple. They knew their ancestors' crimes had finally caught up with them. The eldest-looking being leaned forward, its 4 eyes fixed on Sunmi. "Ambassador," it began carefully, "you must understand the complex political situation of that era." Sunmi placed a data crystal on the table, cutting off the excuse. The hologram that sprang to life showed scenes from their recovered archives: human worlds burning, colonies being systematically destroyed, millions being forced back into primitive existence. "We understand perfectly," she said, her voice cold. "We understand that your civilization feared our rapid expansion. We understand that instead of engaging in diplomacy, you chose genocide. We understand that you erased our history so thoroughly that it took us 12,000 years to discover the truth." The alien skin had shifted to a uniform pale gray, fear and resignation combined, according to their archives. The eldest spoke again, its voice barely a whisper. "What do you want from us?" Sunmi allowed herself a small smile. "First, we want acknowledgement of what was done to us. Second, we want reparations for 12,000 years of lost development. And third," she activated another hologram, showing Earth's newly rebuilt fleet, "we want guarantees that what happened to us will never happen to another species." The collective representatives stared at the ships displayed before them, their skin shifting to nearly white as they recognized weapon systems they thought had been erased from history, designs from humanity's past, improved with modern innovations. "You have rebuilt so much. We remember more every day," Sunmi replied. "The question is, will you help us build a better galaxy, or will we have to do it ourselves?" The threat wasn't subtle, nor was it meant to be. Humanity had risen from the ashes once before. They wouldn't be stopped again. The elder's skin shifted to a deep, resonant gold, a color Sunmi hadn't seen before. "You've changed," it said softly. "Your species, you're not what you were." "No," Sunmi agreed, rising to her feet. "We're what you made us. The question is, are you ready to live with the consequences of that decision?" The storm that had been gathering for 12,000 years was about to break, and the galaxy would never be the same. The red planet hung like a jewel against the black velvet of space, its surface marked by the sprawling complexes of humanity's reborn shipyards. General Taiwan Kang stood at attention on the observation deck of Mars Command, his eyes fixed on the spectacle unfolding before him. One by one, the warships of Earth's new fleet emerged from their construction base. Their hulls gleamed with a metallic sheen that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, a property of the advanced materials recovered from their ancestors' archives. Each vessel was a perfect fusion of recovered ancient technology and modern human innovation. "Fleet status report, Commander," Taiwan said, not taking his eyes off the ships. Commander Minji Ryu consulted her tablet. "All 20 vessels reporting ready, sir. The EDS Vengeance leads the formation, followed by the Remembrance, the Justice, and the Legacy. The rest are falling into standard combat spacing." The ships moved with a grace that belied their massive size. The Vengeance alone was 3 kilometers long, its hull bristling with weapon systems that hadn't been seen in the galaxy for 12,000 years. The collective had tried to prevent this, imposing economic sanctions and trade restrictions on Earth after the first diplomatic contact. They hadn't counted on humanity's resourcefulness or their ability to inspire others. "Message from the Centaurian delegation," Minji reported. "Their ships will rendezvous with the fleet in 6 hours. Taiwan nodded. The Centaurians had been among the first to break away from the collective's control, inspired by humanity's return to the stars. Their ships weren't as advanced as Earth's, but they brought valuable knowledge of current collective tactics and deployments. "They thought they could contain us again," he remarked to Minji. "But we found allies among their oppressed worlds. History won't repeat itself." The commander's expression hardened. Like everyone in Earth's military, she had studied the records of humanity's fall. "The collective's control is slipping, sir. 3 more species declared independence last week. The alliance grows stronger every day." "The alliance of free worlds," a name chosen deliberately to contrast with the collective's forced unity. What had started with Earth and the Centaurians had grown to include 15 species, all seeking to break free from millennia of subtle oppression. "Sir," a junior officer called out, "priority message from intelligence. The collective fleet in the Proxima sector is moving." Taiwan turned to the tactical display. Red dots representing collective warships were shifting position, forming a blockade pattern. "They're trying to cut off our supply lines to the outer colonies," he observed. Minji studied the display. Standard collective doctrine. Isolate, contain, then slowly squeeze until resistance becomes impossible. "That's the problem with the collective," Taiwan said, a slight smile playing at his lips. "They never learn new tricks. Show me the fleet's readiness status." The display shifted, showing detailed information about each Earth vessel. Green indicators across the board. Weapons, shields, engines, all operating at peak efficiency. The ship's AI systems, based on recovered designs but enhanced with modern programming, reported full combat readiness. "Signal the fleet," Taiwan ordered. "Operation Remembrance begins in 30 minutes. Let's show them what humanity remembers." The plan was audacious. While the collective expected them to defend their supply lines, Earth's fleet would instead strike at the heart of their power in this sector. The recovered archives had revealed weaknesses in collective stations. "Message from the Vengeance," Minji reported. "Captain Song reports all ships in position and awaiting your command." Taiwan straightened his uniform. "Send the order. Execute Operation Remembrance. All ships, Combat Protocol Alpha." The fleet moved as one, their engines flaring bright against the darkness. The formation they took was unlike anything seen in modern space combat. Patterns developed by their ancestors, refined through millennia of warfare that the collective had tried to erase from history. "Sir," Minji said quietly, "the collective doesn't stand a chance, do they?" Taiwan watched as the fleet accelerated toward their jump points. "They made 3 mistakes, Commander. First, they tried to destroy us instead of working with us. Second, they failed to finish the job. But their biggest mistake," he gestured to the tactical display, where signals from more Alliance ships were appearing. "They showed the rest of the galaxy exactly what they were capable of. Now everyone knows what they really are." The first ships vanished in flashes of light as they jumped to FTL. Soon, the collective would learn that humanity hadn't just recovered their ancient technology. They'd improved upon it. The ships now heading toward their space were more advanced than anything that had existed during humanity's first rise to power. "Send word to all Alliance members," Taiwan ordered. "Phase 1 begins now. Let's remind the galaxy why they tried so hard to make us forget who we were." As the last ships jumped away, leaving Mars' orbit empty once more, Taiwan reflected on the irony of it all. The collective had spent 12,000 years maintaining their power through fear and manipulation. Now those same tactics had created the very thing they had tried to prevent, a unified opposition led by the species they had tried to destroy. The storm was about to break, and this time, humanity wasn't facing it alone. The alarms blared through the EDS Vengeance as collective ships dropped out of FTL around Proxima Centauri. Captain Jinwoo Park stood calmly on his bridge, watching as enemy vessels materialized against the backdrop of stars. Their crystalline hulls caught the light of the system's red dwarf sun, making them look like predatory fish circling their prey. 37 collective warships detected, Combat Officer Lee reported, her hands dancing over the tactical display. "Standard attack formation. They're moving to surround the colony." Jinwoo studied the enemy deployment. The collective had sent what they considered an overwhelming force, enough ships to subdue a dozen normal worlds. They expected to find a primitive human colony, defended by basic ships and outdated weapons. They were about to learn how wrong they were. "Status of our fleet?" Jinwoo asked, his voice steady despite the tension filling the bridge. "All ships reporting ready, Captain. The Remembrance and Justice are in position behind Proxima B's moon." The legacy group is holding at the system's edge. Colony defense systems are online and tracking targets. The captain allowed himself a small smile. The collective hadn't even noticed the ships hidden in the system's shadow zones, positions mapped out by their ancestors for exactly this kind of defense. Let them make the first move, he ordered. Let's see if they remember how to fight a real war. The enemy fleet moved with mechanical precision, following tactical doctrines that hadn't changed in millennia. Their lead ships broadcast the standard collective ultimatum: surrender or be destroyed. The message was delivered in the patronizing tone they reserved for lesser species. Send our response, Jin Wu commanded. The communications officer activated the ship's main transmitter. Across every collective vessel, screens lit up with the image of humanity's recovered archives. They showed scenes of burning human worlds, of collective ships destroying civilian colonies, of the systematic erasure of human civilization. The message ended with a simple statement: "We remember." Enemy ships accelerating, Lee reported. They're launching fighters. Jin Wu nodded. Exactly as expected. Signal the fleet. Execute Maneuver Phoenix. The Vengeance's engines flared to life as the massive warship began a series of movements that defied conventional space combat doctrine. Instead of meeting the enemy head-on, the human vessels seemed to scatter in random directions. To the collective commanders, it "Show them what humanity remembers," Jin Wu ordered as his fleet executed maneuvers that hadn't been seen in millennia. Ships moved in three-dimensional patterns that turned their apparent weakness into strength. The collective's formation, designed to overwhelm a centralized defense, now found itself split and isolated. "First blood to us," Lee announced as the Remembrance Group emerged from behind Proxima, catching 3 enemy cruisers in a devastating crossfire. The collective ship's advanced shields, designed to stop modern weapons, proved useless against the hybrid technology humanity had developed. Ancient principles enhanced by modern innovation. Enemy fleet attempting to regroup, Tactical reported. They're falling back to secondary positions. Jin Wu watched as the collective commanders tried to adapt to a style of warfare they had never expected to face again. Their ships were technically superior in many ways, but their tactics were stale, predictable. They had spent too long fighting opponents who copied their methods. "Launch Phase 2, he ordered. "Let's show them how much we've learned." The legacy group, which had been holding position at the system's edge, suddenly accelerated to attack speed. But instead of joining the main battle, they executed a series of precise jumps, appearing and disappearing around the battlefield. Each jump lasted only seconds, but each brought devastating volleys of fire from unexpected angles. "Collective fleet showing signs of confusion," Lee reported, unable to keep the satisfaction from her voice. "Their formation is breaking down." On the tactical display, the elegant battle plan of the enemy was dissolving into chaos. Their attempts to counter the human attacks only exposed them to more damage. Ships designed for long-range combat found themselves in knife-fight distances where their weapons were less effective. Vessels trying to maintain formation were picked off by precisely targeted strikes. 7 enemy ships disabled, Tactical announced. 3 more showing critical damage. The rest are falling back too. Wait. The officer paused, checking his readings. "Captain, they're calling for reinforcements." Jin Wu had expected this. The collective never admitted defeat. They just committed more forces until resistance became impossible. But humanity had planned for this too. "Signal the Alliance fleet," he ordered. "Execute Operation Sunrise." As if answering his command, dozens of new ships appeared at the system's edge. The Centaurians had arrived, along with vessels from 3 other species who had broken free from collective control. Their arrival transformed what had been a decisive victory into something more, a statement to the galaxy that humanity was not fighting alone. "Enemy fleet in full retreat," Lee reported as the last collective ships jumped away, leaving their damaged companions behind. "Should we pursue?" Jin Wu shook his head. "Let them go. Let them tell their masters what happened here. Let them explain how the primitives they tried to destroy have not only returned but evolved. The Battle of Proxima Centauri lasted less than 2 hours, but its impact would echo across the galaxy. Humanity had not just defended their colony, they had demonstrated a level of military prowess that sent shockwaves through the collective's carefully maintained power structure. As rescue ships moved to secure the disabled enemy vessels, Jin Wu looked out at the battlefield. 12,000 years ago, humanity had faced this same enemy and lost everything. Today, they had proven that history need not repeat itself, not when you remember your past and learn from it. The thunder of humanity's return had finally rolled across the stars, and its echo would shake the galaxy to its foundations. Fleet Admiral Se Jin Yun watched the galaxy map spread across the bridge of the EDS reckoning. Points of light flickered and changed color as reports streamed in from every sector. Red markers representing collective control were rapidly turning green as system after system declared independence. Another uprising in the Orion Arm, reported Captain Min Seo Kim. The Arcturians have taken control of 3 major collective bases. Their defense fleets joined the rebels instead of fighting. Se Jin nodded, studying the tactical overlay. The Arcturians had been among the collective's most loyal enforcers for millennia. Their defection was sending shockwaves through the entire power structure. "Show me the prison world reports," he ordered. New markers appeared on the map, dozens of planets where the collective had imprisoned species they deemed too aggressive or culturally dangerous. Many of these were latest intelligence from the Centaurian network, Min Seo continued. The Collective Council is in emergency session. 3 more senior members have resigned. Their fleets are refusing orders to suppress the rebellions. Se Jin moved closer to the map, his weathered face reflected in its holographic glow. After 40 years in Earth's Space Force, he had never imagined seeing this day. The Collective, which had dominated galactic politics for over 20,000 years, was falling apart from within. They feared us because we united people, Se Jin realized, speaking almost to himself. Not through force like they did, but through cooperation and mutual respect. That's why they tried to destroy us. Min Seo looked up from her console. "Sir, look at the pattern," Se Jin explained, gesturing to the map. "Every species that's broken away from the collective, they're not just declaring independence. They're joining the alliance. They're choosing to stand together." The evidence was clear in the data streams. Former enemies were now fighting side by side. Species that the collective had kept isolated from each other for millennia were forming trade agreements, cultural exchanges, mutual defense pacts. Message from the Arcturian High Command. A communications officer called out. They're requesting alliance support to liberate their colony worlds. The Arcturians. Min Seo's surprise was evident. They've been the collective's enforcers for thousands of years. Se Jin's expression hardened. They were slaves too. They just wore fancier chains. "Send word. Full alliance support authorized. And get me a channel to their fleet commander." The main screen flickered to life, showing an Arcturian bridge. Their species resembled tall, elegant insects with iridescent carapaces and compound eyes. The commander's translator converted their harmonic speech into Earth standard. "Admiral Yoon," the Arcturian said, their antennae quivering with emotion. We owe humanity an apology. For generations, we helped maintain the system that once tried to destroy your species. The past is past," Se Jin replied firmly. "What matters is what we build now, together." New alerts flashed across the tactical display. Collective fleets were mobilizing, not to attack, but to surrender. Ship after ship was dropping out of formation, refusing orders to fire on their own people. "Sir," Min Seo said urgently, "priority message from Earth Command. The Collective Council has requested direct negotiations. They're offering unconditional surrender." A hush fell over the bridge. This was more than victory. It was vindication. Humanity hadn't just survived their attempted extinction. They had sparked a revolution that would reshape the galaxy. "Send our response," said Jin ordered after a moment. "The Alliance will accept their surrender, but only if they agree to face justice for all their crimes, not just those against humanity." As the message was transmitted, Jin looked again at the galaxy map. The patterns of liberation were spreading like wildfire, crossing artificial boundaries the collective had maintained for millennia. Species that had been kept apart were coming together, sharing knowledge, forming bonds. "You know what the collective never understood," he said to Mincio. "They thought suppressing advancement would keep everyone weak. Instead, they just made us all stronger in different ways. Now those strengths are combining." The captain nodded. They created their own worst nightmare, a galaxy that remembered how to work together. More reports flooded in. The collective's carefully maintained barriers were crumbling. Trade routes reopened. Ancient alliances were remembered and renewed. The galaxy was awakening from a long, enforced slumber. "Set course for Earth," Jin ordered. "The Council will want to coordinate the transition. We need to make sure this change brings freedom, not chaos." As the Reckoning's engines powered up, Jin took one last look at the tactical display. The pattern was unmistakable now, not just victory, but transformation. The collective had spent 20,000 years trying to prevent exactly this, a galaxy united not by force or fear, but by choice and mutual respect. They had failed, and in their failure, they had proven why humanity had been such a threat to them in the first place. Because humans didn't just fight for themselves, they fought for everyone's right to be free. The price of pride was being paid, not just by the collective, but by everyone